Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of the Winging It Knitting podcast, which is where I share all of the things I'm making, which I usually make up as I go. I'm Emily, and I'm from the northeast of England. So in podcast style, let's start with what I'm wearing, which is a pattern by me, and it's called Stay Cosy. I did make a couple of videos about this, where I converted a sewing pattern into a knitting pattern. It's made with Signet Aran in claret. I tend to mostly only wear this during transition periods, so now is a great time for it. It helps keep the back of my neck warm, helps keep my centre mass a little bit warm, but it's not a full-on sweater. Okay, so moving on to my finished object for the month, which is the Sara Sweater, and that's because this is Sara. And she has a lovely raglan sweater. I will do some B-roll to get a bit more of a better shot. But I made this on the Sentro knitting machine. I was practicing the raglan seams. I had a thought for how I could make them look a little bit nicer than I have previously when knitting raglan sweaters on the machine, and I think they look great. I am possibly going to make a tutorial on that, so subscribe if you want to see that. It is just a self-drafted pattern I sort of made especially to fit Sara here. It took about 3 days to make, but that's just because I can't really sit on the machine that long. I don't really knit for long periods of time, so when I say it took 3 days to knit, that's probably only like 20-minute stints, so like an hour. But for me, that was spread over 3 days to make this lovely little sweater for Sara here. I have to admit, I don't really enjoy making baby and small things on the knitting machine. I think because this seems to take just as much effort as an adult sweater when you're knitting it on the knitting machine, because obviously it doesn't matter how many stitches you've got on the machine, going back and forth is the same amount of effort. So I feel like this took just as much effort to knit as I would have knit for me, but I feel like this doesn't have as much wow factor of spending 3 days on my knitting machine. I also think the neckline might need some work here. I just left it raw because she's only a teddy. But I might do some ribbing on the neckline, and you can see here there's no short rows in the back, so it is a bit low. But I'm sure Sara doesn't mind a bit of a cold neck. But I might put a neckline on this, and we'll see. But it's a very good stash busting project. This only took 30 grams of yarn, so it's good if you have anything left over. You can make a nice little baby sweater or a teddy bear sweater. Yeah, so that's my only finished object for this month. And moving on to my first whip, which is the Sophorine by Audrey Borrego. It is a free pattern, and this is what I have so far. So I think when we last spoke, I was just under the bust. So I've knit most of the body. I did some decreases after the bust line, so you can see it moving in a little bit there. And then I've just started I want to do a split hem. So I've just started doing some detail on the edge. I'll do some B-roll again to zoom in for that. But I want to go into a split hem, so I'm doing some decorative sort of work here before I do split. I was going to try and make this really long, sort of like a tunic length, but I don't think I have enough yarn. The yarn I'm using is Hobbycraft's own brand, Knitcraft Bambino Boo. It's an acrylic and bamboo blend. It's DK weight, and this is size 5. I'm not overly impressed with the yarn. You can see, I don't know if you can see, but it is pilling a little bit, and I haven't even worn this yet. This is just from taking it in and out of the project bag. So it's not wearing great, but that is my experience with bamboo yarn. That it doesn't hold up very well. And so I did have a previous sweater which I knit with bamboo yarn, and it didn't hold up. So I thought, well, I'll try one more bamboo yarn just to give it another go, because I can't wear wool. I just can't stand it. So I thought I'd try bamboo, but this one I think is going to end up in the same. As soon as I put this through the washing machine, I think it's just going to wreck it. So bamboo might not be for me. But yes, so I was going to make this quite a long tunic style, but I am running out of yarn, and I've decided that rather than adding length, I think I would prefer a waist tie for this. So I've taken 30 grams to one side to make a waist tie, and then I'm just going to split at the sides and then just knit and knit until I run out of yarn, and then make a waist tie, and then that will this be done. The fit of it I do quite like. It's okay. It's not perfect. I think the V is a little low, but it's a slip over, so I don't mind that because I wouldn't be wearing it on its own. But the V is a bit low. The arm side is also a little bit low, but I am petite, so I really should think about that when knitting patterns. But for a slip over, I don't mind that because I'm going to be wearing something underneath it, as I said, so it's fine. But that is the Sophorine by Audrey Borrego. And my next whip likely needs no introduction because it's been all over everywhere. It is the Rosie Sweater by Lilac. And I have a lot to talk about on this, but this is sort of my progress. We'll get into it. But this is what I have. And I've already made a lot of changes to this. So it's a £6 pattern by Lilac. The yarn I am using is King Cole Finesse in Rose, which is my absolute favourite yarn. It is a cotton and silk blend. It's really affordable. The only issue with this yarn is the colour range, which is a problem when you choose to do a colourwork sweater. So let's talk about the pattern first. Obviously this pattern was absolutely everywhere, and I just fell into the hype of, oh, I'm going to knit this, even though when I looked at the pattern page, there was a lot of red flags that would usually make me not knit this, such as there's no yarn meterage given, which I don't like that because that makes it a little inaccessible for people who don't want to use the yarn that the designer is using. And also a lot of the sizes have the same yarn grams listed, which is highly unlikely that different sizes are going to use the exact same yarn on. So if you buy what's on the pattern page, you're likely going to either be plain yarn chicken if you're knitting in the larger size, or you're going to have lots of leftovers if you're knitting in the smaller size. So I don't understand why balls of yarn are listed, or grams of yarn are listed rather than actual meterage or yardage. So that's usually a red flag that makes me think, I'm not going to knit this because the designer doesn't sort of align with my values. And then the other red flag for me was, this was way back when the pattern was just released at the end of August, beginning of September, and there was maybe 1 or 2 finished projects on there, and none in my size that I was going to be knitting, which for me makes me question whether the project was test knit, because where are all the test knitters projects? Why aren't they on there? So usually that's a red flag for me as well. If there's not a lot of projects on there, I like to see what the sweater will look like in different body types and different sizes. Maybe people have used different gauge, different colours. You know, that's part of the whole testing process, is providing that to people. So again, that's another red flag that would usually make me not want to knit pattern. And then the third red flag with this was the comments. If you read the comments, they're full of people finding errors in the pattern, which again should have been picked up in the tech editing and the testing process. Sometimes these things happen, but for there to be that many comments when there's not that many projects, it's not a great look. And looking at the comments now, there's even more with people being confused. And also there's a few comments about people not enjoying the knit and having to frog it. So I think maybe I'm not alone in my thoughts. But let's get on to my thoughts. So I cast on this project, and it's the first one I've ever done where the back piece is instead of knit with, so it's a normal contiguous construction where you do the trapezoid at the back. I can actually show you rather than just drawing it in the air. So you cast on at the back, and then rather than doing this with increases, it's done with short rows, which I'm guessing gives a bit more of this seamless look as you go from the back to the front, which is nice. However, the way the short rows are written here, and I don't know if that's normal because I said this is the first time I've done a one with short rows, is you actually do the short rows into the cast on row, which I do a backwards loop cast on, and I don't know if that's what caused some of the issues. I'll insert a video I took straight after I'd done the short rows, and you can also see that they just don't look great. I know this is a cotton yarn, so I can't expect too much. If I was to be using a wool yarn, it does tend to hide a lot of imperfections that a cotton yarn doesn't. But it just looks messy, and I'm not overly happy with it, with how it looks on the pickup edge. So I think if I was to knit this again, if I do end up frogging this all the way back, I would cast on, knit one row, and then start following on from the pattern. Again, I don't know if it's a problem with a backwards loop cast on if you had it done. I don't think she specifies which cast on to use, but if you had it done like a long tail cast on or a cable cast on or something like that, it might not be a problem doing short rows into the cast on edge, but it wasn't fun and it doesn't even look good. So I don't mind if it's one of those things, if it takes a lot of effort but it looks beautiful, or if it's really easy and it doesn't look great. But this was not fun and doesn't look great, so not ideal. And then my next issue was the neckline. So after I'd finished the back panel and picked up along the shoulders, did a few more short rows on the front, which I think look okay. You can see the dodgy cast on edge, but other than that, I think even in cotton yarn, my short rows don't look too bad on the front edge there. And then when it said to cast on the neckline edges, it was like right here, like maybe not even. I am a larger lady, so maybe I do need a bit more width to come over, but it just felt too tight. So, and I'd measured my gauge and I was a little bit off gauge. I think I was getting 29 stitches instead of the 26. So I worked out I should have had to do an extra 4 rows to make up for my gauge. I ended up doing 10. And I'll insert some pictures of me trying this on. And you can see that even though I did an extra 10 rows, the neckline is still fitting like a crew neck, and it's still a little bit too tight for me. The neckline is not great, so I'm not overly happy with that. I did do, so it's an alternate twisted rib line. So I do my knits as normal, but I twist my pearls. And I think that makes it look quite nice. I quite like that look on a neckline. Yeah, and I also picked up every single stitch for the neckline to make sure there was no more pulling in, and still it's too snug for my liking. But maybe I'll get used to it, and it is cotton and it's going to be a big oversized sweater, so I'm hoping with the weight it would like pull out the neckline a little bit with wear. So that's my hope. That's why I continued, even though I didn't like the neckline, hoping it would stretch with wear and with wash, which I still have hopes that it will do. So more about the pattern. Once I'd finished all of the contiguous construction and you move on to the raglan increases here, the pattern wrote that really, really complicated way of making the switch from contiguous to raglan, and it's not a complicated thing to do. You're just adding stitch markers in. But yeah, it was a little bit too overcomplicated for me. I am used to using drops patterns, where everything is just like, the whole pattern could be just a paragraph. So I am used to something a bit more sparse, and maybe this was too hand-holdy for me. I don't know. But yeah, pattern writing style is not jiving with me. So I raced through, got through to where the colourwork started, and I have ripped back all of the colourwork. So I have actually knit the colourwork already. So the colourwork was very slow. And if you're not familiar with stranded colourwork, if it's your first stranded colourwork project, go for it. Ask a beginner can do anything they put their mind to. But the floats, some of them are very long. Some of them you'll have like 8 or 10 stitches, one stitch, and then another 8 or 10 stitches till using that colour again. And I don't know whether that line, that very first line of colourwork, is that, and whether that would have been better in duplicate stitch, which I'll come back to. I think, I was expecting the colourwork to be the fun part, but for me, it wasn't. Because every single line is different, and it's not like a geometric pattern, so there's no logic, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no repeats to the actual colourwork. And I'm used to sort of reading my knitting. I like to knit a lot of cables, a lot of lace, where you can sort of just look at it and know what's happening. You can't do that with this pattern, which is no fault of the pattern at all. That's how it's designed. It couldn't be done any other way. But it's just not something I thought about. Like I said, I pretty much jumped into this project with zero thinking about it. I just loved the look of it and wanted it. So yeah, the colourwork wasn't actually that fun. I had to reference the chart for every single stitch. So it ended up taking me about an hour to do each row. So I was ended up doing like a row a day, because I only tend to knit in short stints. So it took me a long time. And when I did get past the sort of the first row's head, I didn't really like it. So I bought this pink because I thought it would be a good contrast and a way to use up some stash yarn that I have also in the King Cole Finesse. And I thought, I could do a nice dark dusty pink with the cream flowers. But the contrast was just not good enough. And I think that's the problem with buying yarn online. I couldn't do, you take the picture and you can see, and you turn it to grayscale, and you can see if you can actually see the colour differences. Well, I did that on this photo. I'll put it up on screen. And you can't see the roses at all. The contrast is just not good enough. And usually I don't mind a low contrast, but when the whole point is a high contrast colourwork, so I mean, that's just my own fault. I should have really thought it through. So I thought, I was considering doing duplicate stitch for some of the stitches with long floats. Why don't I just duplicate stitch over all of it? So I tried that. I laid out some yarns that I have very little of, because I didn't think it's actually going to take that much yarn to pick a colour. And I ended up going with a white sparkly yarn, and I thought, let's just lean into this girly sweater of it being pink with a white glittery flowers on it. Let's just go for it. But then once I'd duplicate stitched a couple of the motifs on top of the stranded colourwork, it was just really thick and it didn't really stretch very much. And then once I figured that it was too thick and it wouldn't work, I thought, I'll duplicate stitch over it and then I'll remove the cream yarn to get rid of those floats. And I think because I was duplicate stitching on top of the double layer and making all my tension look really good, once I took out the cream yarn, the duplicate stitch, it just didn't look sharp, it didn't look good. And I want this to be perfect. I think it's a sweater that is going to take a long time. It needs to be a labour of love. So I made the decision to rip back all of the colourwork, and then I'm just going to knit the sweater without the colourwork, and then I'm going to duplicate stitch on top for that. Maybe. I feel like I've wasted a month making this, and it's not as fun as I thought it would be. I thought it would be quite nice looking at everybody's project, sort of doing an unofficial cow with everyone else who's working on this project. but nobody else really seemed to be having the problems I was having. Maybe it's just that beginners don't really post that much on Ravelry, or I wasn't seeing those projects, but yeah, I'm sort of falling out of love with this at the moment. And I'm really sort of feeling a little bit overwhelmed with how many whips I do have at the moment. So I think I'd rather concentrate on the ones that are a bit further along, and maybe I'll revisit this at another time. But yeah. Okay, so that's enough about the Rosie Sweater by Lynette. A maybe whip, a maybe frog. Maybe I'll have a decision by next time I speak to you. What I was also thinking about with that yarn, if I ended up not using it for the Rosie Sweater, in my last podcast I wore the Midsummer Crown vest top, and I got some nice comments about that. Thank you very much for everyone who commented on that top. And it is one of the best fitting ones I've ever made, I think, even though that's no credit to the pattern. The pattern is not great, but the end product ended up being quite nice. And I was thinking maybe I could make a sweater version of that in pink, and that might look quite nice. And then I feel like, because I've got that sort of inception in my head now, that maybe I do need a pink one. And then I'm like, But then I do really like the look of the white roses. I think that was a nice contrast. Oh, I'm torn. I don't know. Comments down below, please help me make a decision. Do I abandon the Rosie Sweater, or do I knit it with the white flowers? Do I make the Midsummer Crown in another pink yarn? Let me know what you think. And the final project that I'm going to talk about today is this self-drafted pattern of a nice Lilac Cardigan, which is a contiguous construction, button band, knit as you go with a cable, but the cable goes all the way around the neckline. I sort of had this idea for a while, and I couldn't find any patterns that actually had this. A lot of them had the cable going up the button band at the front, but then it would come and go down the back, and I wanted it to go all the way around. And I'd actually seen a couple of posts on Reddit of someone trying to figure out how to do it, and I thought, I'm just going to give that a go. And you know what, it wasn't actually that difficult to figure out. So the yarn I'm using is the Sirdar Country Classic 4-ply in Lilac. It is I think it's a merino acrylic blend. It's not the nicest feeling yarn. For me, like I said, I don't really like wool, but this is a cardigan, so, and I can handle merino if it's soft. So this is another project that is a labour of love. It's very slow going because I'm knitting bits, deciding I don't like it, frogging it back, trying different things. So I started out with the idea of cable and that I wanted to do the integrated button band. So I tried a few different things for the button band. I'll put a picture up of all the different things that I tried, but I ended up just going with basic garter. And then to do the neckline curve with the, very good at showing this, with the cable going all the way around, all I did was short rows. And the first one I didn't work it out. I'd done too many short rows, so the curve ended up being too short. Would have fit a child, but this is for me. So I ripped that back, started again, and did the short rows with some more gaps in between, a bit more straight sections. And this fits lovely. So we've got the shoulders right on the shoulders, neckline going around. Yeah. I'll insert some B-roll of better footage than that of me wearing it. And then so then experimented with different broken ribs. So the idea of knitting just plain stockinette is just not my jam. So I thought I would do some broken rib in there. And I first did like 1x3, but I didn't like it. Made it look a bit too stripy. So this is 7x1. And I like the look of that. Like I said, this has been labour of love, lots of knitting it, ripping it back, knitting it again. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the challenge and the experimentation of it, and I think it's going to fit me perfectly. And I'm very excited to have this in my wardrobe. Like I said, I'm also learning a lot. This is the first time I've ever done a self-drafted contiguous construction as well, which I've sort of become addicted to after knitting the Nautical Nights sweater. I think because I spent all of 2023 or 2024 perfecting my raglan master pattern, so just raglan after raglan after raglan, that this was such a novelty that I think I'm probably going to spend all of 2025 and 2026 just knitting contiguous construction, but I like it. It's something different. It's nice to have different types of sweaters in my wardrobe as well. So that is what I'm just calling the Lilac Cardigan. I don't know if I'll do this as a pattern just because I'm making it so custom for me that I think if I graded it, I'm not sure it would actually fit anybody else. But I will happily write up what I'm doing, and if anybody wants to adjust it to themselves, feel free to do so. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, and that was a nice challenge to get the cable along the back there, which, I mean, let's face it, I always wear my hair down. No one's ever going to see it other than me, but it was a challenge. I wanted to see if I could figure out how to do it. So I think that's everything that I've been knitting over the last month. So the majority of my knitting time has been spent on the Rosie Sweater, which has all been frogged back. I do have some whips which I've made absolutely zero progress on. I've got the cabled air sweater, and then there was a sewing machine cover, and lots of other whips that I haven't touched, so I'm not going to share those with you. But thank you for listening to me ramble. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. Let me know in the comments what you're working on, and I'll see you next time. Bye.